Not rudely, not coldly, just enough distance to make it clear he was never meant to come closer. A polite nod, a quiet, "Good morning," and then she would disappear before a conversation could begin. Eli Mercer told himself it didn't matter. He had built a life that didn't require company, didn't expect kindness, didn't depend on anyone staying. The Idaho Valley had a way of shaping men like that. Wide land, long winters, and silence that stretched so far it could swallow a man whole if he let it. Eli didn't let it. He worked. He fixed fences, counted cattle, chopped wood until his hands forgot what softness felt like. That was enough. Or at least, it had been. Until she arrived. Rose Bennett. She had taken over the old Harper homestead just beyond his eastern fence, a place most folks had given up on after years of neglect, and somehow she made it live again. The porch got repaired first, then the garden, then the fence line, one stubborn post at a time. Eli remembered the first day he saw her clearly. She was struggling with a broken beam, boots planted firm in the dirt, jaw set like she had something to prove to the land itself. He had ridden over, tipped his hat, offered help. She thanked him, then said no. No hesitation, no apology, just quiet certainty. And that was how it stayed. For 16 months, Eli watched without meaning to. Not in a way that crossed a line, just the way a man notices the only other soul living within miles. He noticed she worked harder than most men. He noticed she never asked for anything. And he noticed she carried something heavy enough to keep everyone out. She never lingered in town, never stayed after church, never let a conversation turn into anything more than a sentence. But there were moments, small ones, that didn't fit the walls she built. A basket of vegetables left quietly on a neighbor's porch. A melody, hummed low in the evenings, drifting across the valley with the wind. Soft, beautiful, and sad enough to make a man stop what he was doing without knowing why. Eli never asked questions. Out here, people earned their privacy the hard way, so he gave her distance, the same way he wished the world had given it to him once. And maybe that would have been the end of it. 2 quiet lives, side by side, never crossing. Until she disappeared. It started with something small. Her chickens, crowded near the fence, restless, unfed. No smoke from the chimney, even with the autumn cold settling in. Her horse pacing in the corral, waiting. Eli told himself it wasn't his concern. Maybe she'd gone to town. Maybe she'd taken a trip. Maybe she just wanted to be left alone. But one day passed. Then 2. And the silence around her place stopped feeling like privacy. It started feeling like something was wrong. By the 3rd evening, Eli was already saddling his horse, before he admitted to himself he was going to look for her. Eli didn't rush. Men who rushed out here made mistakes. And mistakes out here didn't give you second chances. But there was something in his chest, tight, restless, that wouldn't let him wait until morning. So he rode. The sun was already dropping behind the ridgeline, pulling long shadows across the valley as he crossed the fence line into land that wasn't his. Her land. Rose Bennett's homestead sat quiet, too quiet. No movement, no sound, no sign of life. Eli dismounted slowly, boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. "Miss Bennett?" he called out. His voice carried, then disappeared into the open air. No answer. He stepped onto the porch, knocked once, firm, then again. Nothing. The door didn't move. The windows stayed dark. Eli circled the house instead. That's when he saw it. The garden gate, swinging loose in the wind, and tools left scattered in the dirt. Not set down, dropped. His jaw tightened. People didn't leave things like that, unless something had pulled them away fast. He crouched low, scanning the ground. Tracks, boot prints, small, hers, moving away from the house, heading east, toward the rough country, toward land no one walked, unless they had a reason. Eli straightened slowly, eyes lifting toward the hills beyond the valley. Old mining trails, broken terrain, steep drops that could take a life without warning. If she'd gone out there alone, he didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. For a moment, he hesitated. This wasn't his business, wasn't his responsibility. She had made it clear. For 16 months, she didn't want him anywhere near her life. Eli exhaled slowly, running a hand across his jaw. "Then you turn around," he muttered under his breath. "Ride back home and mind your own land." He didn't move, because something about this didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like danger. Eli turned back toward his horse, moved with quiet purpose now. He grabbed his bedroll, checked his canteen, then reached for the rifle strapped along the saddle. Out here, you didn't go into unknown ground without one. He swung up into the saddle, eyes fixed on the trail leading east. The last light of day caught the ridgeline, painting it gold, like a warning. He followed her tracks into the hills, each step taking him farther from the life he understood, and deeper into something he couldn't see yet. Branches grew thicker, the ground rougher, the trail narrowing into something barely visible beneath fallen needles and stone. More than once, dismount, leading the horse by hand, careful, deliberate, because one wrong step and both of them wouldn't make it back. "Rose!" he called again, voice sharper now. Only the forest answered. Darkness came fast beneath the trees. Too fast. Eli knew better than to push blind into terrain like this. So he found a clearing, small, just enough space to make camp. He built a fire, low, controlled, not for warmth, for thinking. Because now the truth had settled in. She hadn't just left. She had gone somewhere. She wasn't supposed to go alone. Eli sat there, staring into the flames, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Worry. Real, heavy, unavoidable. And as the fire burned low, one thought kept returning, over and over. If she didn't make it back on her own, he might already be too late. Dawn came cold. Eli was already awake before the light touched the trees. He didn't stretch, didn't linger, just stamped out the last of the fire and moved. The tracks were harder to follow now. Wind had shifted in the night, dusting loose dirt over the ground, blurring the edges of where she had gone. But not enough to lose her. Not yet. He moved slower, more careful, eyes scanning every inch of earth, every broken twig, every place the ground had given way under a hurried step. She had been moving fast, too fast. Then he saw it, a scuff mark, deeper than the rest, and beside it, something smaller. Eli crouched, hand hovering just above the dirt, another set of tracks, not hers, smaller, uneven, a child's. His jaw tightened. That didn't make sense. No one had ever seen her with a child. No one had mentioned one. For 16 months, she had been alone. Eli stood slowly, eyes lifting toward the ridge ahead. She hadn't been alone. She had been hiding something. And now whatever she was hiding had pulled her out here. He picked up the pace. No more hesitation. No more questions. The trail grew steeper, rock replacing dirt, forcing him to climb, to pull himself upward by hand in places. Leading the horse became impossible, so he tied it off, gave it slack, and kept going on foot. "Rose!" His voice echoed off the stone, bounced back at him, empty. The land opened suddenly, a break in the trees, and beyond it, a rocky slope, dropping into a narrow ravine below. Eli slowed, careful now, One wrong step here, and there wouldn't be a second chance. That's when he saw it. A flicker of color, blue, barely visible, half hidden beneath an overhang of rock. Eli moved faster, sliding down the slope, boots scraping stone, gravel shifting under his weight as he descended. "Rose!" This time, there was an answer. Faint, broken. "Samuel?" "No," he corrected under his breath, voice low, urgent. "Eli." He reached the overhang and stopped. Rose Bennett was curled against the rock, her dress torn, mud streaked across the fabric, her face pale, eyes barely open. But she wasn't alone. In her arms, a small boy, no more than 5, wrapped tightly in her shawl, shivering, burning. Eli felt something in his chest drop, hard. "Help him," she whispered, her voice cracking. Not fear, not panic, just exhaustion, the kind that came from holding on too long. Eli dropped to one knee beside them, careful, slow, like one wrong move might break something fragile. "Hey," he said quietly, "you're all right. I got you." He reached for the boy first, hands steady, lifting him gently from her arms. The child barely stirred, just let out a weak breath, and leaned into him like he had already decided this was safe. Fever. Bad. Eli shifted, pulling the boy closer to his chest, then looked back at Rose. "You hurt?" She shook her head faintly. "No, just tired." Her body swayed, and before she could stop it, she collapsed forward. Eli caught her, one arm holding the boy, the other steadying her weight. "You stayed out here," he muttered, half to himself. 2, 3 days. "For him," she whispered. And just like that, everything made sense. Eli exhaled slowly, then shifted his stance, lifting the boy securely, guiding Rose to her feet. "You're not staying here anymore," he said. "No argument, no hesitation, just decision. You're coming home." And as he turned toward the climb back up, carrying a child he had never known existed, supporting a woman who had never once asked for help, Eli Mercer realized something he couldn't ignore anymore. This wasn't just a search. This was the moment everything changed. The ride back was slow. Too slow for Eli's liking, but as fast as it could be. Rose barely held herself upright in the saddle, arms wrapped tight around the boy. Like if she let go, he might disappear. Eli walked beside them the entire way, one hand on the reins, the other ready in case she fell. Neither of them spoke. There wasn't breath left for words. By the time they reached the homestead, the sun had dropped low again, painting everything in dull gold, like the world had slowed down just enough to let them make it back. Eli moved first. He lifted the boy from her arms, carried him inside, and laid him carefully on the bed. "Stay with me, kid," he murmured low. The boy stirred faintly, but didn't wake. Eli turned back. Rose was still standing in the doorway, like she hadn't fully returned yet. "Inside," he said gently. She stepped forward and nearly collapsed. Eli caught her again, this time holding her steady longer, until she found her balance. "You don't have to hold it together anymore," he said quietly. Something in her expression cracked. Not fully, just enough. Inside, Eli moved with quiet efficiency. He built the fire higher, fed it until the room filled with warmth. He fetched water, clean cloth, checked the boy's temperature again, still burning. "Name?" Eli asked. Rose hesitated, then answered softly. "Noah." Eli nodded once. "All right, Noah." He placed a damp cloth on the boy's forehead, hands steady, practiced, like he'd done this before, even if he hadn't. Rose watched him. quiet, exhausted, and for the first time, not distant. "I didn't think," she began, voice breaking slightly, "anyone would come." Eli didn't look up. "You didn't ask." "I couldn't." That made him stop, just for a second. "Why?" Rose sank slowly into the chair beside the bed, eyes fixed on Noah. "Because if people knew," she swallowed, "they'd see me different." Eli leaned back slightly, arms resting on his knees. "You've been alone out here for over a year." He glanced at her. "Seems like you already knew that." A faint, tired breath escaped her. "Not like this." She looked at Noah again, fingers brushing gently through his hair. "I came west to start over. Just me and him. But people, they ask questions. They make assumptions. They decide things about you before you ever get a chance to speak." Her voice dropped lower. "I didn't want him to grow up being seen as someone's burden." Eli studied her quietly, then shook his head once. "He's not a burden." She looked up at him then, searching his face, like she needed to be sure that wasn't kindness, just spoken out of habit. "You don't know what that means," she said. Eli met her gaze. "Yeah. A beat. I do." The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't distance. It was something closer to understanding. Noah shifted slightly in the bed, a small sound escaping him. Eli moved immediately, adjusting the blanket, checking his breathing. "Fever's breaking," he said quietly. Rose exhaled, a breath she'd been holding for days. Her shoulders dropped, and just like that, the strength she'd been carrying gave out. She covered her face, and the tears came. Not loud, not desperate, just steady, unstoppable. Eli didn't try to stop it, didn't tell her it was all right, didn't offer empty words. He just stayed, right there, close enough, so she didn't have to go through it alone. After a while, her breathing slowed, the tears faded, and when she lowered her hands, something had changed. The walls weren't gone, but they weren't as high anymore. "You should rest," Eli said quietly. She shook her head faintly. "I'm all right." "You're not." A pause. "Not yet." He stood, grabbed a blanket, draped it gently over her shoulders, then moved to the chair across from the bed, settling in, like he wasn't going anywhere. Rose watched him for a long moment. "You don't have to stay." Eli didn't even look up. "Yeah. A beat. I do." And for the first time since she arrived in the valley, Rose Bennett didn't feel like she was facing the world alone. Morning came gently, not with urgency, not with fear, but with light. The kind that slipped through the window, rested across the floor, and made everything feel quieter than it had in days. Eli had fallen asleep in the chair without meaning to, head tilted slightly, arms folded, still close enough to reach the bed if he needed to. He woke to movement, small, careful. Noah was sitting up, pale, still weak, but awake. "You're back with us," Eli said softly. The boy blinked at him, then gave the smallest nod. Rose was already there, sitting beside him, one hand resting lightly on Noah's shoulder, like she still needed to feel he was real. "His fever broke in the night," she said quietly. Eli nodded once. "Good." That was all he said, but something in his voice carried more than the word itself. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Eli made oatmeal, thicker than usual, added a bit of honey, something small, but enough to make a sick child eat. Noah ate quietly, watching Eli like he was trying to understand him. "You always this serious?" the boy asked weakly. Eli paused, then huffed a faint breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Most days." Noah considered that, then nodded, like that answer made sense. Rose watched the exchange, and something softened in her eyes. Not just relief, not just gratitude, something deeper, something she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. Later, when Noah had fallen back asleep, she stepped outside. Eli was already there, leaning against the railing, watching the valley stretch out in front of him. She stood beside him, close, but not guarded anymore, not distant. "I should have told you," she said finally. Eli didn't look at her. "Maybe. I was afraid." Her voice was honest now. No walls left to hide behind. "Of what?" "That if you knew," she swallowed, "you'd see me as something complicated." Eli turned then, looked at her fully. "You are." A flicker of hurt crossed her face, but he didn't stop there. "So am I." That landed differently. He looked back out over the land. Life out here ain't simple. Never was. A beat. But that don't make it something to walk away from. Rose studied him, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Not just the quiet rancher across the fence, but the man who had walked into danger, stayed without being asked, and never once made her feel like she owed him anything. "You stayed," she said softly. Eli shrugged slightly. "Didn't feel right leaving." She let out a small breath, laugh, half something else. "Most people would've." "Yeah," he said. "Most people ain't me." For a long moment they just stood there, the wind moving gently across the land, the same land that had once felt empty, now holding something different. "Eli," her voice was quieter now, more careful, "I don't know what this is yet." He nodded once. "Don't have to." "But," she continued, "if you ever wanted to stop by..." A faint smile touched her lips. "You wouldn't have to stay on the other side of the fence anymore." Eli looked at her, really looked this time, then nodded. "All right." It wasn't a promise, it wasn't a declaration. It was something simpler, something stronger, a beginning. Over the following weeks, he did stop by. Not every day, not all at once. Just enough. Fixing things that needed fixing. Teaching Noah how to ride. Bringing supplies he claimed he had too much of. And slowly, the distance that had once defined everything between them disappeared. By winter's edge, the small house by the fence didn't feel separate anymore. It felt connected, like two lives choosing to move toward each other. And one evening, as the sun set low across the valley, Eli stood on that porch again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Rose's hand rested in his, simple, steady, certain. And inside, Noah's laughter filled the room, breaking the kind of silence Eli had once thought would follow him forever. Out here, love didn't arrive loudly. It didn't demand attention. It didn't ask for permission. It showed up quietly, stayed when things were hard, and built something real, one day at a time.